My boyfriend proposed and my sister physically attacked me, screaming I stole her man. She ripped my ring off and threw it. Mom sided with her until my boyfriend revealed the shocking truth about their secret history. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. Growing up, my sister Brenda and I were never close. It wasn't just a typical sibling rivalry, it was a fundamental imbalance, a foundation laid by our parents from the moment I was born. Brenda was the sun, and I was just a planet caught in her orbit, expected to revolve around her without ever casting a shadow. She was the golden child, the entitled one, constantly pushing boundaries and getting away with it because my parents couldn't be bothered to deal with her tantrums. If Brenda wanted something, she got it. It didn't matter who had to suffer for it. A new dress, the last piece of cake, the lead in the school play she hadn't even auditioned for, somehow, the world just bent to her will, with my parents acting as her chief engineers. Meanwhile, I was the quiet, responsible kid. The one who didn't rock the boat. I got good grades, I did my chores without being asked, and I never, ever talked back. In my parents' minds, that meant I didn't need as much attention or support. "Oh, Carol's fine," my mom would say with a dismissive wave of her hand. "She can handle herself." What she really meant was, Carol doesn't make noise, so we don't have to pay attention to her. So, for most of my life, they let Brenda walk all over me. I learned early on that the best way to survive in our house was to become invisible. Over the years, she bullied me in ways I still struggle to describe. It wasn't just the name-calling or the constant, cruel insults about my looks, my clothes, my friends. It was the subtle, insidious stuff. The kind of cruelty that leaves no bruises but chips away at your soul. She would borrow my favorite sweater and accidentally spill bleach on it. She'd read my diary and then drop casual, humiliating hints about my secrets in front of her friends at the dinner table. She had a special talent for undermining my friendships, planting seeds of doubt and jealousy until the person I trusted most would suddenly stop talking to me. She did it all just to prove she could. I remember in 8th grade, we both had to do a science fair project. I worked for weeks on mine, a detailed model of the solar system with tiny, hand-painted planets that actually rotated. I was so proud of it. I stayed up late every night, carefully gluing and painting. Brenda, of course, waited until the last minute and had our dad basically build her a generic volcano model. The night before the fair, while I was asleep, she went into the garage, took a can of black spray paint, and accidentally sprayed a huge, ugly streak across my model of the Milky Way. When I saw it in the morning, I was devastated. Her excuse? I was just touching up my volcano and the nozzle got stuck. My mom just sighed and said, "Well, Carol, you shouldn't have left it out in the garage." It didn't matter that it was the only place big enough for it. It was my fault. At the science fair, Brenda's volcano won a blue ribbon. My solar system, with its ugly black scar, didn't even get an honorable mention. Another time, when I was 10, I had begged for this one specific doll all year. She was beautiful, with long, blonde hair and a porcelain face. I named her Elizabeth. I loved that doll more than anything. I spent hours brushing her hair, making her little clothes from scraps of fabric. One afternoon, I came home from school to find Brenda in my room, a pair of scissors in her hand. She had cut off all of Elizabeth's hair, hacking it into jagged, ugly tufts. She'd drawn on her face with a permanent marker. When I started to cry, she just laughed. That cold, empty laugh. I ran downstairs, sobbing, holding the ruined doll. My mom took one look inside, exasperated. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Carol, it's just a doll. Stop being so dramatic." She turned to Brenda. "Brenda, apologize to your sister." Brenda rolled her eyes, the picture of boredom. "Sorry," she mumbled, not a hint of remorse in her voice. And that was it. No punishment. No consequences. I was the one told to stop making a fuss. I learned a powerful lesson that day: my pain didn't matter. My things didn't matter. Only Brenda mattered. That night, I buried what was left of Elizabeth in the backyard. It felt like a real funeral, the first of many for little parts of my heart. Life continued in that same pattern for years. I learned to keep my head down, to make myself smaller, to not want things too much, because wanting things just made them a target for Brenda. Then, in my junior year of high school, something shifted. A glimmer of light appeared in my gray, predictable world. His name was Walter. We met in the most ordinary way, in chemistry class. I was struggling with a lab assignment, and he was my lab partner. He wasn't like the other boys who were loud and always trying to get attention. He was quiet, kind, and he had this way of looking at you when you spoke, like what you were saying was the most important thing in the world. For the first time, I felt seen. He didn't seem to notice Brenda, who was in the same class and tried her usual tactics of charming and commanding everyone's attention. He just saw me. Our first real conversation outside of class was at a little coffee shop called The Daily Grind. We were supposed to be studying for a test, but we ended up talking for 3 hours. He asked me about my favorite movies, and I hesitantly told him about my love for old black and white films. Instead of calling it boring, his eyes lit up. He started talking about Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall with a passion that matched my own. No one had ever shared that with me before. That coffee shop became our spot. We'd go there a couple of times a week, sharing a muffin and just talking. With him, I wasn't Brenda's little sister. I was just Carol. He laughed at my stupid jokes. He listened intently when I talked about wanting to be a writer someday. He encouraged me to join the debate team, telling me I had a sharp mind and a strong voice. I'd never thought of myself that way before. I was always the quiet one, the one who faded into the background. I was nervous to introduce him to my family. I put it off for weeks, making excuses. One afternoon, he finally asked me about it. "Are you ashamed of me or something?" he teased gently. "No. Of course not," I said quickly. "It's just, my family can be a lot. Especially my sister." He took my hand. "Hey, I'm not dating your family. I'm dating you. It'll be fine." He came over for dinner a week later. It was as tense as I'd expected. My dad was trying to talk about a potential promotion at work, but Brenda kept interrupting, turning the conversation back to herself, to some drama with her friends. My mom, of course, hung on her every word. I mentioned that I'd been named captain of the debate team. My dad grunted. "That's nice, honey." Brenda scoffed. "Debate team? That's so nerdy. Who cares?" Before I could retreat into my shell like I always did, Walter spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "I care," he said, looking directly at Brenda. "It's a huge accomplishment. Carol worked really hard for it. We should all be proud of her." The table went silent. Brenda stared at him, her mouth slightly open, completely stunned that someone had dared to challenge her. My parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My mom quickly changed the subject, but the message had been sent. Walter wasn't afraid of her. He was on my side. Later that night, as he walked me to the door, he took my hand. "Don't ever let her dim your light, Carol," he said. "You shine way too bright for that." In that moment, I didn't just like him. I knew I was falling in love with him. He was my safe harbor in the constant storm that was my family life. Our relationship was the one stable, beautiful thing in my life. Walter became my rock, my confidant, and my best friend. We talked about everything: our dreams, our fears, our future. We both knew we wanted to get out of our small town, maybe move to the city after graduation, build a life together. The idea of a future with him was the only thing that made my present life bearable. We would spend hours looking at apartment listings in cities far away, imagining a life where we could just be us, away from the suffocating judgment of my family. The proposal wasn't some over-the-top, grand gesture. Walter isn't that kind of person, and honestly, neither am I. It was just a really calm, sweet moment between the two of us. It happened on a cool autumn evening, about a year and a half after we started dating. We had spent the whole day just being together, a perfect, simple Saturday. We went for a long drive with the windows down, listening to old music. We got ice cream from a little roadside stand. It was one of those rare, perfect days where nothing extraordinary happens, but everything feels right. That evening, we went to our spot at the park by the lake, the place where we had our first real conversation that wasn't about chemical equations. The air was crisp, and the leaves were turning brilliant shades of red and gold. We'd just finished sharing a pizza from our favorite local place, and we were watching the sun set over the water. He turned to me, his expression serious but so full of love it took my breath away. "You know," he started, his voice a little softer than usual, "I was thinking about my life before I met you. It was fine, I guess. But it was all in black and white. And then you came along, and suddenly everything was in color. You make everything better, Carol." He told me he couldn't imagine a single day of his life without me in it. He said he wanted to wake up next to me every morning and go to sleep next to me every night. He said he wanted us to stick together, no matter what life threw at us. Then, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple box. He didn't get down on one knee. He just opened it, and inside was a delicate silver ring with a tiny, sparkling sapphire. "Carol," he said, his voice a little shaky, "I love you more than I have words for. Will you marry me?" It wasn't a huge surprise, I knew how much we cared about each other, but hearing him say it out loud, seeing that ring, it made everything feel so real. Tears welled up in my eyes, but they were happy tears. It was one of the purest, happiest moments of my entire life. When I told my family about it later that evening, I braced myself for the usual negativity. But to my shock, Brenda actually seemed okay with it. I mean, she didn't jump up and down or anything, but she smiled, a thin, tight smile, but a smile nonetheless. She said, "Congrats," and didn't immediately try to tear me down. For her, that was huge. My parents seemed relieved that I was settling down, as my mom put it. For a brief, fleeting moment, it felt like maybe things were different. I thought, for once, she might actually be happy for me. It felt like we were having a normal family moment, the kind I used to see on TV and wish I had. That fragile peace, that false hope, was the cruelest trick of all. The illusion of peace lasted for exactly 2 days. 48 precious hours of me walking on air, constantly glancing at the beautiful ring on my finger, and allowing myself to believe that my life was finally, truly heading in a happy direction. I spent hours online, looking at wedding dresses in small, rustic venues. I let myself dream. Then, the storm broke, and it broke with a violence that shattered everything. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was in the kitchen, making myself a cup of tea. I was humming a song that had been on the radio, thinking about Walter and flipping through a wedding magazine I'd bought on a whim. The house was quiet. My parents were at work, and I thought Brenda was out with her friends. The afternoon sun was streaming through the kitchen window, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. Suddenly, the back door flew open with such force that it slammed against the wall, rattling the pictures hanging there. A ceramic plate my mom kept on a little stand on the counter fell and shattered on the floor. I jumped, spilling hot water on my hand. Brenda stormed in. Her face was a terrifying mask of fury. Her eyes were wild, her cheeks flushed a deep, blotchy red. She looked like an animal. At first, I just thought she was in one of her moods. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice cautious. "Did something happen?" She didn't answer. She just stalked toward me, her movements jerky and aggressive. Before I could even process what was happening, she was on me. She grabbed me by the arm, her nails digging into my skin so hard I cried out. She yanked me around, away from the counter, and started screaming. It wasn't just yelling, it was a raw, guttural scream, a barrage of angry words and accusations that barely made sense. "You think you're so much better than me, don't you?" she shrieked, her face inches from mine, spit flying from her lips. "Always the good one, the quiet one. Saint Carol. You think you can just take whatever you want? Brenda, what are you talking about?" I tried to pull away, but her grip was like iron. "You always get everything," she screamed. The irony was so staggering it would have been laughable in any other circumstance. That was literally her entire personality, her whole existence, getting everything. "You think you're so special because you got a ring? You think you won?" When I tried to twist my arm free, she slapped me. The sound cracked through the quiet kitchen like a gunshot. It was so hard my head snapped to the side, and my ears started ringing with a high-pitched whine. The shock of it, the sheer disbelief, froze me for a second. The world went blurry, and all I could feel was the stinging heat on my cheek. She had pushed me, sure, she had been cruel, but she had never hit me like that before. And she didn't stop there. With her other hand, she shoved me backward against the counter. The corner of it dug painfully into my spine. She hit me again, a hard, closed-fist blow to my shoulder that sent a shockwave of pain down my arm. She just kept screaming, these incoherent words about betrayal and theft and how I'd ruined everything. It wasn't until I managed to find my voice and push her back with all my strength, yelling "Get off me," at the top of my lungs, that she finally backed off, breathing heavily, her chest heaving. By the time she was done, I was shaking so badly I could barely stand. The tea I'd been so happy about was now just a puddle of lukewarm water and shattered ceramic on the floor. Just as Brenda stumbled back, breathing like a cornered animal, my parents came running in. My dad must have gotten home from work early. They'd heard the screaming, the crash of the plate. They burst into the kitchen and just froze. They saw me pressed against the counter, tears streaming down my face, a red handprint already forming on my cheek. They saw the shattered plate on the floor. They saw Brenda, wild-eyed and furious. And in that critical moment, the moment a child needs their parents the most, they did nothing. My mom wrung her hands, her face a mess of anxiety. "Calm down, both of you. Just calm down," she kept repeating, her voice high and strained, as if we were just two kids having a squabble over a toy. My dad just stood there like a deer in headlights, completely useless, his eyes darting between the two of us, paralyzed by the conflict. He didn't come to me. He didn't demand an explanation from Brenda. He just stood there, a silent, gaping hole where a father should have been. "She hit me!" I cried, my voice cracking, pointing a trembling finger at Brenda. "She just attacked me for no reason." I tried to tell them what happened, to explain the unprovoked violence, but my words were drowned out by the sheer force of their denial. Brenda, seeing her opening, stormed off to her room, slamming the door behind her as if she were the victim, leaving me to face our parents alone. When I begged them to do something, to go talk to her, to hold her accountable, they acted like it wasn't a big deal. The ringing in my ears had subsided, replaced by the deafening roar of their indifference. "Carol, maybe you said something to provoke her," my mom suggested, already weaving a narrative that protected her precious golden child. "I didn't. I was making tea," I insisted, my voice rising with hysteria. "She just came in and attacked me." My mom sighed, that long-suffering sigh she always used when I was being difficult. "Well, maybe she's just stressed," she said, as if that justified her hitting me. "This engagement has been a lot for her to handle." Stressed? She was stressed? I felt a hot flash crawl up my neck. I looked at my dad, pleading with my eyes for him to step in, to be a parent. He just shook his head and muttered, "Let's just let things cool down for a bit. We don't need any more drama." He then busied himself with finding a dustpan to clean up the broken plate, his actions a clear signal that he was more concerned with the mess on the floor than the mess of his family. After he finished, I tried to talk to him alone in the living room. "Dad, please," I whispered. You saw what she did. He wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the TV screen. Carol, you know how your sister gets, he said, his voice low. Just let it go. It's easier for everyone if you just let it go. They didn't ask if I was okay. They didn't check my arm where her nails had left deep, red crescent moons. They didn't acknowledge the handprint on my face. Their only concern was restoring the false peace of our home as quickly as possible, and that meant sweeping Brenda's violence under the rug. I stood there in the wreckage of our kitchen, surrounded by the silence of their betrayal, and I had never felt so utterly, completely alone. I couldn't stay in that house. I ran to my room, locked the door, and my hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial Walter's number. The second he heard my voice, he knew something was terribly wrong. Carol? Honey, what's wrong? You're crying. Through choked sobs, I told him everything. From the way she'd slammed the door to the slap that left my ears ringing. He was furious. Not at me, obviously, but at the situation. His voice, usually so gentle, was hard with anger. Why would she do that? What the hell is wrong with her? He kept asking. I didn't have an answer. She congratulated us, I mumbled, trying to make it make sense. Like a normal person. Get out of there, Carol, he said, his voice firm. Get out of that house right now. Go somewhere safe. Go to Joyce's. I'll meet you there as soon as I can get away from work. I did what he said. I called my best friend, Joyce. She answered and just heard me crying. I'm on my way, she said, no questions asked. I packed a small bag, my movements numb and robotic, and slipped out the front door without saying another word to my parents. Joyce was waiting in her car at the end of the street. The moment I got in, I fell apart. She just drove, one hand on the wheel, the other rubbing my back. She took me to the urgent care clinic first. My arm was throbbing, and a deep, ugly bruise was starting to form on my shoulder. The clinic was cold and sterile. The doctor was kind, but he asked a lot of questions. Did you fall? I just shook my head. Can you tell me what happened? He asked gently. It was humiliating to sit there on the crinkly paper of the exam table and whisper, my sister did this to me, while the nurse gave me this pitying look. Nothing was broken, thankfully, but I had some deep bruising. The doctor said it would hurt for a while. He asked if I wanted to file a police report. The thought was so overwhelming, I just shook my head. Joyce took me back to her place. Her parents were out of town for the week, so we had the house to ourselves. She made me tea, the same kind I had been trying to make for myself earlier, and wrapped a bag of frozen peas in a towel for my arm. She didn't push me to talk. She just put on an old movie, one of my favorites, and sat with me on the couch. Walter came over as soon as he could, his face a storm of worry and anger. The moment he saw the bruise on my face, something in his expression hardened. He held me for what felt like hours, just letting me feel safe. But as the hours turned into days, the confusion grew. I kept going over everything in my head, again and again, trying to pinpoint what triggered her. Was it jealousy? Something I said? I don't even know anymore. My parents haven't called. Not once. Not a single text to check on me. I heard from a mutual friend that they're just brushing the whole thing off, telling people Brenda was probably just overwhelmed by the engagement news. Overwhelmed. As if that was an excuse for assault. Walter is pushing me to cut ties with her completely. Joyce is skeptical too, saying this was a long time coming. But I can't stop thinking about it. What made her snap so suddenly? Why go from fake supportive to brutal violence in a matter of days? The not knowing was almost as painful as the bruises. I spent the next 2 days in a fog at Joyce's house. I mostly stayed in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, trying to make the swirling chaos in my head make sense. Joyce was amazing, bringing me food and just sitting with me, not pushing me to talk. She tried to get me to eat, but everything tasted like cardboard. Walter came by every day after school, his presence a quiet comfort, but even his hugs couldn't chase away the cold dread that had settled deep in my bones. The silence from my parents was a constant, heavy weight. Then, on the third day, my phone rang. I saw Brenda's name flash on the screen and my heart plummeted into my stomach. I almost didn't answer. Joyce, seeing my face, said, "You don't have to talk to her, Carol." A part of me screamed to just block her number and never look back. But another, more foolish part of me, the part that still craved some kind of explanation, some kind of closure, made me swipe to answer. The moment I said hello, she was screaming. Not yelling. Screaming. It was like a dam had burst, and everything she'd been holding back came pouring out in a torrent of pure, undiluted rage. "You pathetic little backstabber," she shrieked, her voice so loud and distorted I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "You think you can just waltz in and steal him from me?" I was completely bewildered. "Brenda, what are you talking about?" "Steal who?" I thought she was being delusional. Walter was never hers to begin with, right? My mind was scrambling, trying to find some logic in her madness. "Don't play dumb with me, Carol," she screamed. "I saw you. I saw the way you looked at him from the very beginning. You ruined everything. Everything was going according to plan, and then you had to go and ruin it." That's when it hit me. A cold, terrifying dread started to creep up my spine. She wasn't just talking nonsense. The way she said plan, it sounded real. It sounded rehearsed. My physical reaction was immediate. The phone felt slippery in my sweaty palm, and I felt a chill spread through my entire body. "He was never supposed to fall for you," she spat, and that was the line that changed everything. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "He was never supposed to fall for you." The words echoed in my head, nonsensical and horrifying all at once. It wasn't about jealousy over my engagement. It was something else. Something calculated. Something so much worse. I couldn't even form a response. My throat was tight, and no sound would come out. I just hung up on her mid-rant. I stood in the middle of Joyce's quiet living room, the phone feeling heavy and cold in my hand. Joyce came in from the kitchen, a concerned look on her face. "What was that?" I could hear her from in here. I tried to speak, to tell her what Brenda had said, but the words were stuck. I just shook my head, my mind racing, trying to connect the dots. A plan? He wasn't supposed to fall for me? A wave of nausea washed over me as a terrible, unthinkable suspicion began to form. I had to know. I had to call Walter. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear of Brenda. It was from a new, colder terror. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Walter's name. My thumb hovered over the call button. I was terrified of what I was about to find out, but the not knowing was even worse. I pressed the button. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm and concerned. "Hey, Carol. Are you okay? I was just thinking about you." I couldn't waste time with pleasantries. I couldn't even say hello. My voice came out flat and strange, like it belonged to someone else. "Brenda just called me." There was a pause on his end. A very slight, but noticeable hesitation. "What did she want?" he asked, his tone suddenly cautious. "She said I ruined everything," I said, my voice starting to tremble. "She said you were never supposed to fall for me." "Walter, what did she mean?" The silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It stretched on for 5, 10, 15 seconds. It was a thick, suffocating silence, filled with everything he wasn't saying. I could hear his breathing, a little too quick, a little too shallow. That silence was my answer. It confirmed my worst fears before a single word was spoken. "Walter," I said again, my voice barely a whisper this time, because I was afraid it would break. Please. Tell me what she meant. He finally let out a long, shaky breath, the sound crackling over the phone. Carol. I can explain. Then explain, I demanded, a hard knot of dread tightening in my stomach. Explain why my sister would say something like that. Explain what plan she was talking about. It's complicated, he began, his voice low and miserable. It doesn't sound complicated, Walter, I said, my own voice gaining a sharp, cold edge I didn't recognize. It sounds like you and my sister had a secret. A secret that involves me. So start talking. It started a long time ago, he said, and I could hear the desperation in his voice as he tried to find the right words. Before you and I, before we got together. It was a stupid, stupid mistake. And then, the truth started to come out, piece by painful piece. He didn't confess everything right away. He tried to soften it, to frame it in a way that made him sound less guilty, but the ugly core of it was unavoidable. And as he spoke, I felt the last bit of ground beneath my feet crumble away into nothing. He admitted it all. Before he and I ever got together, he and Brenda were in a relationship. Not a serious one, he insisted, just a casual thing. They'd been dating for a while, long enough for my sister to rope him into one of her cruel, twisted schemes. Apparently, they had come up with this disgusting plan. It was Brenda's idea, of course. She was angry that some of her friends thought I was sweet and innocent. She wanted to prove how pathetic and gullible I was. So, she made a bet with Walter. The bet was simple, he had to pretend to like me, to get me to fall completely, head over heels in love with him. He had to learn my interests, charm me, become my everything. The end game? He was supposed to ask me to the senior prom. He was supposed to let me get a dress, get my hopes up, make me believe it would be the most magical night of my life. Then, on prom night, in front of everyone, he was supposed to stand on stage during the king and queen coronation, take the microphone, and announce that the whole thing had been a joke. That he could never love someone like me, and that it was all a bet to prove how desperate and pathetic I was. My stomach churned. The memory of our first meeting, our study sessions, our first kiss, all of it was suddenly tainted, twisted into something ugly and fake. Our conversations at the coffee shop, his encouragement to join the debate team, was it all just research? Lines from a script? But according to Walter, something changed along the way. He swore it. He said that after a few months of pretending, it wasn't pretend anymore. He said he actually started to look forward to our talks, that he found himself thinking about me all the time. He told me the specific moment he knew it was real for him. We were at the park, and I was telling him a long, rambling story about a book I'd read, and he said he just looked at me, at the way my eyes lit up, and realized he was completely in love with me. He said he knew then that he could never, ever go through with the plan. That's when he broke up with Brenda. She went ballistic, but he told her the bet was off. He said he was going to pursue a real relationship with me. The proposal, he claimed, was his way of proving to me, and to himself, that what we had was real. He'd been keeping this a secret because he was terrified of losing me, especially after how much he said he regretted being part of the plan in the first place. I couldn't even process it all. Every word felt like a punch to the gut. The person I trusted most in the world, the person who told me he loved me, the man I had just agreed to marry, had started our entire relationship as part of a bet to humiliate me. And my sister, who I already thought was the worst person I knew, had orchestrated the whole thing. The assault in the kitchen suddenly made perfect, horrible sense. It wasn't about the engagement itself, it was about me winning. It was about Walter choosing me over her, ruining her sick game. I didn't even say much to him. I just felt numb. Like I was floating outside my own body, watching this horror movie unfold. I told him I needed space and hung up the phone. I slid down the wall in Joyce's living room and sat on the floor, wrapping my arms around my knees, as the full weight of the betrayal crashed down on me. I don't know how long I sat there, just staring at nothing. Joyce found me an hour later, still on the floor, and I told her everything. She was speechless, her face a mixture of shock and rage. But I knew what I had to do. There was one more confrontation I had to face. I had to look my parents in the eye and tell them exactly what their perfect daughter had done. I drove back to that house. I walked in the front door, my heart pounding with a cold, hard anger I had never felt before. My parents were in the living room, watching TV. Brenda was there too, sitting on the couch, looking smug. They all looked up, surprised to see me. "Carol, what are you doing here?" my mom asked, her voice wary. I didn't waste any time. I stood in the doorway and I laid it all out for them. The bet. Brenda's plan. Walter's confession. I told them every sickening detail, including the part about the public humiliation at prom. I told them this was why Brenda had attacked me. I told them everything, hoping, with one last, stupid shred of daughterly devotion, that this would finally be enough. That they would finally see what their golden child was capable of and hold her accountable. It blew up in my face. Brenda, of course, started crying these huge, fake crocodile tears. She's lying. She's making it all up to get back at me because she stole my boyfriend. And my mom, who always bends over backward to excuse Brenda's behavior, didn't even care about what she'd done. The cruelty, the manipulation, it didn't matter. Instead, she turned on me. Her face twisted into a mask of indignation. She actually said, "How could you do this to your sister? You knew how much she cared about him." I just stared at her, dumbfounded. Cared about him? Mom, she used him in a bet to try and destroy me. She physically assaulted me just days ago. "You're always so dramatic," she snapped. "You probably drove her to it. You stole her boyfriend, and now you're trying to play the victim. As if I was the one who had betrayed Brenda." My dad, as usual, didn't want to get involved. He just muttered something about how we needed to fix this as a family and then conveniently disappeared into the kitchen. My parents stood there, a united front with their weeping, manipulative daughter. They had made it painfully clear where their loyalties lie. My mom was the one who delivered the final blow, her voice cold and final. "Either you break up with Walter, apologize to your sister, and fix the mess you've made, or you can forget about us helping with your college fund. We will not support these selfish choices." They just wanted me to keep the peace, no matter how much it cost me. And in that moment, something inside me finally, irrevocably broke. The part of me that had always craved their approval, that had always hoped they would one day see me, it just died. I looked at the three of them, a perfect, toxic little unit, and I felt nothing but a cold, clear resolve. If you're still listening, please help me by liking this video and commenting the number 1 below, so I know you gave me a like, and I understand you're with me on this journey. Your support is a huge encouragement for me. Please, comment the number 1, and then listen as I tell you the rest of my story. After that final confrontation with my family, I knew what I had to do. There were 2 major ties in my life that were built on a foundation of toxicity and lies, and I had to sever them both if I was ever going to be okay. The first was with my family. The second, and in some ways the harder one, was with Walter. A part of me wanted to believe his apologies, to believe that he really did love me and that we could move past this. But every time I tried to picture a future with him, all I could see was the lie. I couldn't unknow what I now knew. I couldn't build a marriage, a life, with someone who had started our relationship as part of a cruel joke. Trust is like a mirror, once it's shattered, you can piece it back together, but you'll always see the cracks. And this wasn't a crack, it was a complete demolition. I called him and asked him to meet me at a neutral place, the Daily Grind, the coffee shop where we'd had our first real talks. It felt fitting, in a sad way, to end it where it all began. I needed to do this face to face. When I walked in, he was already there, sitting at our old table, looking anxious and miserable. He stood up when he saw me, his eyes full of a desperate hope that I was about to crush. We sat down, and I just laid it all out. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just empty. I told him that I believed he had come to care for me, but that it didn't change the origin of our story. It didn't erase the fact that for months, every "I like you," every shared secret, every kiss had been part of a performance. He begged me to reconsider. He swore he'd do anything to make it up to me. "We can go to counseling," he pleaded. "I'll spend the rest of my life earning back your trust. We can move away, right after graduation, just like we planned. We can leave her and all of this behind." He looked sincere. He looked heartbroken. Tears were welling up in his eyes. "Please, Carol," he whispered, reaching for my hand across the table. "Don't let her win. Don't let her destroy the one real thing I've ever had." I pulled my hand back gently. "She already did, Walter," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "The moment you agreed to her bet, she won. What we had might have become real for you, but it was born from a lie. And I can't live with that. Every time you told me you loved me, a part of me would wonder if it was just you trying to make up for the lie. I can't live like that." I stood up. He looked up at me, his face crumpled in despair. "I love you, Carol." "I know," I said softly. "And that's the saddest part of all." Walking out of that coffee shop was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. It felt like I was amputating a part of myself. But I knew, deep down, that it was a sick limb that needed to be cut off so the rest of me could heal. As for my family, I decided to cut them off completely. After the ultimatum, I went back to the house one last time, on a Saturday morning when I knew they would be out. Joyce came with me. We moved with a quiet efficiency, like a two-person tactical team on a mission. We packed up everything that mattered to me, my clothes, my books, my old photographs from a time before I understood the dynamics of my own family. As I took down pictures from my walls, I felt a strange sense of detachment. This wasn't my home anymore. It was just a house filled with ghosts and bad memories. I found the box with my ruined doll, Elizabeth, that I had dug up years ago and hidden in the back of my closet. I left it on Brenda's pillow. A final, silent message. My mom called while we were loading the last box into Joyce's car. She didn't ask where I was or what I was doing. She launched right into a tirade about how selfish I was being, how I was tearing the family apart over a silly high school drama. I listened to her for a moment, the same old script, the same old accusations. And I realized I didn't feel hurt anymore. I didn't feel angry. I just felt nothing. The power they had over me was gone. "I'm done, Mom," I said calmly, and I hung up. I blocked her number, my dad's number, and Brenda's number. I was finished being their scapegoat. I was done bending over backward to keep a peace that only ever benefited them. I gave them so many chances to be there for me, and they failed every single time. My best friend Joyce has been my rock through all of this. We talked it over, and we've decided to move out of state together after the school year ends. Her family is supportive and is already helping us make plans. I'm going to finish my last few months of high school in peace, living with Joyce, and then we're going to start fresh, somewhere far, far away from here. I know it won't be easy. Starting over is scary, and cutting ties with my family, no matter how toxic they are, hurts more than I can put into words. There's a part of you that always mourns the family you wished you had. But I know this is what I need to do to protect myself and to build a life where I'm not constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next betrayal. Last week, Joyce and I took a drive to the city we plan on moving to. We looked at a couple of tiny, run-down apartments we could barely afford, and instead of being discouraged, we just laughed. We bought a pizza and ate it sitting on the hood of her car, looking out at the city lights. It felt real. It felt possible. To everyone who listened to my story, thank you. Your kindness in just being here has helped me realize that I don't have to stay stuck in this toxic cycle. For the first time in a long, long time, I feel hopeful about the future. I'm choosing myself. Finally. If any of you have ever had to make a difficult choice like this, to walk away from people you love to save yourself, please share your story in the comments. Knowing we're not alone makes the journey a little less lonely. Thank you for listening.